Good afternoon, morning, whatever it is, afternoon. Thanks for being here. Our guest today is a lifetime resident of Whatcom County and has lived on the same farm the entire time, which is also the only source of income his family has had for a livelihood. Today he is going to try to explain some of the many obstacles put in front of their family farm business by the ever-vigilant, no-growth, and regulation-happy bureaucrats. Please welcome Rich Apple and Gerald Barron of Whatcom Family Farms to our stage.
Well, thank you for having us. I chatted with Riggs probably several months ago. He called and asked if we could come and make a presentation, and I knew I was going to like Riggs right away when he told me that he too had farming in his background. He grew up on a chicken farm. And so we talked a couple different times, but for probably a half an hour each time, just talking about our similar experiences and our common connection. And I think that as farmers, what we're seeing now, people that are my age and older can probably look back and have a connection to farming, either your parents, your grandparents, an uncle. Somewhere you have a connection to farming, and it helps you as when you see news stories or TV or whatever to filter the message. And what we're seeing, and Charlie was talking about the younger generation, they don't have that connection any longer. So what's been happening is that the agriculture community has really come under attack by a lot of different groups, environmental groups and whatnot, claiming, you know, we're destroying the environment, or we're just, you know, hard on our cattle, or whatever group you choose that are coming after us. And they're putting out messages, and it's really having an effect on that younger generation that doesn't have any connection to farming. So there are a lot of good organizations out there, the Dairy Federation, Cattlemen, there's a lot of groups out there, they're all doing good things, but we felt after a particular piece that Como did on water quality, came up here into Whatcom County and just really smeared the dairy industry, that we needed to do something. We didn't really have a way to respond back to that. We just thought that was a real hole that needed to be filled. And we got together, we started by getting together with a half a dozen dairymen and talking about it. And the attitude in the county amongst the dairymen at that time, I think, was pretty sour. There was a lot of guys that were thinking, man, I'm just gonna get out. And so we met, and we decided kind of through a process that we would hire Gerald Barron, who I'll have come up here in a little bit and kind of walk through some of the slides to help us deal with this. We didn't really know how to deal with it, and so we got together. We started creating our own website as a group of dairymen, and then at the same time, there was these water improvement districts that have started in the county, and there was 2 long-standing ones, but we added 4 more in the last year and a half, all dealing with 6 different watersheds in the county, and each one has a board, and they too wanted to deal with some of the issues and some of the messaging of water, and they were looking to work with Gerald as well. We thought we really should come together as an organization, and let's all get together and let's start, be a lot more efficient and work at really telling our story, telling what we are doing, and the accusations that we're not regulated are bogus. You know, we have a lot of regulations, and water quality testing, the more water quality testing we do, the better the results look. And we're not done on that, but that's a big part of why we did it. And I think, reaching that younger generation, we have a girl that feeds calves on our farm, and she has 13,000 followers on Instagram. And all it is she's a couple pictures of calves, and she explains, why we do what we do. And it's amazing how you can influence and how far away from that I am at 50. And so I think we realize that we too have to break this generational barrier if we're going to be able to farm in the future. The public holds the key to us farming in the future. It's, the courts won't protect us. We saw this happen in the logging industry. There was a fellow that talked at a Western dairy conference, and he talked about how in Oregon he went through the whole spotted owl thing, and he said that we thought that the courts would protect us. We thought we would never lose our right to log, but it was the court of public opinion that really they needed to be working on. And he was urging us as dairymen 10 years ago to change our strategy. And I think for me at that time, I thought it was interesting, but I didn't come home saying, hey, let's get organized, let's do this. It took a crisis, and we are in the midst of a number of them now, and Gerald's going to share a little bit more on that. So I'd like to introduce Gerald. Gerald also has an agricultural background and grew up on a dairy in Whatcom County, and which is an added benefit because he is passionate about what he's doing for the dairy community, and we're very pleased to have him. He's probably overqualified to be working with us farmers, but we're loving it, and we're getting some work done. Thank you.
This is too complicated for me.
Especially the supervisor does not want to
Turn on.
I'll do it.
You can advance it. Well, thank you, Rich, and thanks for having us here today. Let me start by asking you a question. If saving family farming in Whatcom County is really important to you, raise your hand. You know what? If I went to a resources meeting, or if I went to a Democrat meeting, or I went to a meeting on, maybe even on Western Washington University campus, and I asked that question, I would still get pretty much the same answer. And going back to your question, it's Elliot, right? You say, how do we deal with a kin man who's saying, I'm not going to listen to it? No, but he will listen to those people who care about saving family farming. And that's a power that we have not really used. So, okay.
Go ahead.
We can take time for you to eat, that's all right. So as Rich indicated, farmers across Whatcom County, facing a number of very serious threats to the future, decided that they needed a voice. Go ahead, next slide. And Rich briefly explained how we can say we're a unified group of, the voice of unified family farmers in Whatcom County. Well, if you understand the watershed districts and how that came about, watershed districts really incorporate all the farmers and landowners in those watersheds. And they roll up into a joint or coordinating board called the Ag Water Board. And the Ag Water, I started working with the dairy farmers about a year ago, right? And starting doing some of our public relations outreach. And then the Ag Water Board, as Rich indicated, said, we need to do the same thing on water rights as well as water quality. So the Ag Water Board invited the Dairy Federation to come together and form a unified group that would represent basically all the interests of all family farmers in Whatcom County, and that's where Whatcom Family Farmers came from. Next slide here. So the question I think a lot of people have is, why are we so serious about really getting involved in this right now? And I remember my background is in crisis communication, working with oil companies and utilities and that sort of thing. But I came up to Linden a year ago to do a crisis communication workshop for farmers. And Fred Leckel, who is now the executive director of Whatcom Family Farmers, when I mentioned that I'd like to do that, he looked at me and he said, do you know we're in crisis? And I said, no. And he said, well, we are. And he explained it, and I said, yes, you are in crisis. And let's look at what some of those crises are. We have lawsuits that are aimed directly at dairy farmers. How many of you are familiar with what happened in Yakima in the cow pellets case? Some of you are. Charlie Tebbett, a lawyer from Eugene, Oregon, formerly with the Western Environmental Law Center, basically in cahoots with the EPA, sued a number of dairy farmers and got a judge in Spokane to decide that manure is not actually organic fertilizer, but it's solid waste, and it needs to fall under solid waste rules. And if that is applied across the country, it's the end of the industry in effect. Those same lawyers are coming up here, unfortunately and very sadly for farmers. The Lummi Nation has hired that same group, and meeting with us in October said that after the first of the year, this year, they would be suing a number of our dairy farmers. We are still working with them and talking with them, and that's a good thing. And I think we're making some progress, but that threat still hangs over them very strongly. By the way, those lawyers earned $3.1 million that the farmers had to pay of their legal fees in that particular case. We also have the false accusations of water pollution. Rich mentioned that. The farmers are being blamed, dairy farmers in particular, for the water quality problems that have led to the Portage Bay shellfish closure. Now, after looking at that, we know that that's not the case, particularly because of the 1998 Dairy Nutrient Management Act. But that's what Como reported. That's what was in Whatcom Watch. That's what these lawyers, Andrea Rogers Harris in particular, are going around trying to convince everyone that it's the farmers who are responsible for the shellfish bed closures. We have massive new regulations. These same lawyers, the same Western Environmental Law Center, plus a number of partner groups, have gone to the Department of Ecology and pressured them hugely, saying basically, you do not adopt the same regulations that the judge imposed in Yakima, then we will sue you. And they have put huge pressure on the legislature and on the regulators to put massive new regulations in place. The initial draft of the new CAFO permit, or the NPDES permit that Ecology is working on, which came out last year, we did a little survey of dairy farmers across the state, and if they imposed that new regulation, it would have driven 50 to 75% of dairy farmers out of the state. We think we're making really good progress in getting them to understand the science better, but we'll know that at the end of June when the draft of the regulation comes out again. We have our own community activists in Whatcom County here, and I'm sure some of you know them, some of them by name. But we also have ongoing media attacks, whether it's Como and Seattle media, but also local media as well that we're needing to deal with. Next slide. So what are we doing? The primary issues are water quality and water access. Those are if you look at all the issues, there are all the pressures that are being put on us. Water quality obviously is a huge issue for everyone. This is really focused on Portage Bay shellfish closures, so we're needing to deal with that. But water access is probably the bigger long-term issue. A lot of our farmers have been waiting 30-some years for the state to issue water rights that they were told to ask for. So, there are those people in our community saying, hey, they're using water illegally. No, they're not, because they've done what the state has asked them to do, but it's been over 30 years for them to be issued the water rights. And part of the reason for that are tribal issues and state regulations and court decisions that all affect whether or not these farmers will be able to have these water rights. Well, there's a lot of farmers that are feeling very, very vulnerable given what's happened in a lot of these situations. So that's one of the things we really need to work toward, is to make certain that our farmers have water that they need to farm in the future. Our immediate issues are, as I mentioned, dealing with the Lummies and negotiating on these potential lawsuits, dealing with the ecology and their permits, the county comprehensive plan and critical areas ordinance. I really appreciate the work that's being done by Common Threads and all the people here on that. We are in the process of collecting as much information as we can, and we will be communicating. And that's one of the big advantages that we have now with Whatcom Family Farmers. We have a platform to communicate with, and certainly largely to the farming community. But we will be letting the entire community, and particularly the farming community, know what this means for them in the future. And we have had some very positive meetings, Rich, you can correct me if I'm wrong, with some of the county council members who are also making it clear. They may not agree with us, philosophically on a lot of issues, but they're making it clear that the county council, for the most part, does not want to see farming disappear. Now, we have to see that put into practice, and that's going to be a very interesting thing as we work through the comprehensive plan. Next slide. Water access priorities. How many of you have heard the use it or lose it law? It's a law that applies only to farmers, but it basically says if you don't use your water rights over a certain period of time, I think it's 5 years, you lose those rights. Well, farmers have been working very hard on conservation and put an awful lot of conservation measures in. And the conservation measures then reduce their need for water and therefore their need to use their full water right. Well, but if they don't use their water right, they lose it. And if you lose your water right, you lose it forever on your piece of property. It's a I believe, 1917 law that needs to be updated. And that's one of the things that we may be asking your help for in getting through the legislature so that we can do more conservation without being punished for doing that. We need the ability to get water rights and that includes transferring and banking those water rights. We need those water rights that have been long delayed to be issued. And we need to look at some long-term solutions. We have lots of water. We're just putting out, and if you want to see, there's a new material we're putting out called Fish Farms and Families. Basically, we have lots of water. Our aquifer is huge, and it is refilled, more than refilled every year. Even when we have drought years, it's amazing how quickly it recovers when the rains start coming again. It doesn't mean in order to meet in-stream flow rules and what the tribal rights may entail that we don't need to address some long-term storage. So that's one of the things that we'll be looking at, long-term storage or making use. There's a study right now, and Jack, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think $700,000 of state money is being put into studying the options of a deep water aquifer that is more toward the west of us. So there's other ways in which we can do to help ensure that we have water that we need for farming. Next slide. I know just when you're about to put some... The CAFO permit, CAFO stands for Concentrated Animal Feeding Operation. Again, this is something where the environmental lawyers who are intent on putting, by the way, the lawyer who sued the dairy farmer said in court, I like to quote this, because he said in court to the judge, these farmers are killing America. So that's what we're dealing with. There is definitely a true believer thinking he can save the world by putting farmers out of business. And these are the ones that are putting huge pressure on the legislature. So we need to counter that, and I think one of the best things that happened in the year that we've been involved is Ecology Director Maya Bellin came to Linden to meet with farmers, and we called the farmers together at the Northwest Washington Fairgrounds. And I wasn't with her, Fred Lickel was with her at the time as she walked in. But as she walked in that door and she saw 150 farmers in there, he said she used 5 really bad words in a row. I wish I'd heard that. But there's no question of the impact that made. And we know that Department of Ecology knows who Whatcom family farmers are. And that's really important because those who are opposed to it are also making their presence known, and finally we're getting something to counter that with. So we're working on getting an optional state permit that will give some third-party protection. These lawyers out of town from Oregon, you might say, why aren't they suing Oregon dairies? Or why aren't they suing Idaho dairies? Because the state law in those areas provides those who have a permit, a discharge permit, to have third-party protection against lawsuits. Our legislature tried to get that law through the legislature this year, and using their normal deceptive tactics managed to get that killed. And they made it clear in the legislature that the reason that they wanted it killed is they want the right to sue dairy farms, even though that right doesn't exist in other states. Okay, so we have the next draft coming up in June, and again, we may come back to you. Yeah.
I'm sorry, who wanted the right to sue?
Western Environmental Law Center. They are not our friends.
And they were able to convince the legislature?
Yeah, because they said, oh, this legislation, and unfortunately King 5 bought their story and everything like that. They said, oh, this is going to diminish our ability to protect water. Absolutely not true. The only thing that would have diminished is their ability to sue farmers. It was actually enhanced water protection. So next draft, end of June, if we have some problems with that, we'll probably come back to you and say, hey, can we get some help from you guys in putting some pressure on the legislature there? Okay, next slide. Comprehensive plan, again, I mentioned that we're going to be looking at that. Our job will be to really to communicate what the impact on agriculture, our family farmers will be, and then do what we can to activate and energize the people who need to be involved so that they support what you guys are doing there. Okay, next. I want to talk a bit about, how many of you have heard of What's Upstream? Okay, we came across this about, I don't know, 8 months ago. Saw what was happening there. We assumed Western Environmental Law Center was behind it. Actually, they provided a lot of content. But along the way, we discovered, well, we handed out some sheets on your papers, on your tables that have some more information about it. This is a very serious attack, vicious, malicious, and very dishonest attack on farming. It really came to light in Whatcom County when their billboards, or bus boards, appeared on the WTA buses, and farmers got really upset about that. And then a billboard appeared in Bellingham, another billboard in Olympia. Well, it's a coordinated campaign led by the Swinomish tribe, and incorporating a number of other environmental groups, including the Western Environmental Law Center. But what was absolutely shocking as we started looking into it is that the entire $570,000 campaign has been paid for with your tax dollars. This was done through an EPA grant to the Northwest Indian Fisheries Commission, and which was responsible for doling out a $3 or $12 million, I'm not sure, grant that EPA gave them for various restoration projects. But the Swinomish decided to use it for this political attack on farming. Now, the EPA reviewed this for whether it was legal or not. Now, you know perfectly well that it's not legal to use taxpayer money to lobby or engage in political activity. And yet on the website it said call to action. And there was a form letter in there and said, if you hit this button, we will send a letter to our Washington senators whose votes we hope to influence. Is that political activity?
Yeah.
And yet this was reviewed by the attorney for Region 10 EPA and determined to be not in violation of federal law. That's the problem we're dealing with. Well, unfortunately, what we decided to do is that this was a state issue. It's not a Whatcom County issue, and we needed to get support from farmers and farm organizations around the state. And so we formed another organization called Save Family Farming. And so that was specific to deal with Western Environmental Law Center, this What's Upstream, and now to deal specifically with the EPA involvement of that. I can tell you that we've been very successful in getting a lot of media attention on it. If you go to our website, you're going to see about 30 or 40 stories across the nation, a lot in ag press. But if you go to the Seattle Times today, you will see an editorial that I never would have believed would have happened. A very pro-farming editorial and a very damaging one to this effort. So, and that's in Seattle Times today. So I was thrilled by that. From the editorial board, yes, you're as shocked as I was. So we're making great progress in bringing this to the attention. What we were concerned about is that we heard that the Swinomish tribe had set aside $500,000 of tribal money to gather signatures for a citizens initiative to put on the ballot to mandate 100-foot buffers. And that's what was really driving it. They also tried to put that through the legislature in this last session. So the EPA, Gina McCarthy, the EPA director in Washington, D.C., is definitely on the hot seat about it. She's been grilled by senators. 145 members of Congress have sent a letter to her saying, we're extremely concerned about this. The chairman of the Senate Agriculture Committee, the chairman of the Senate Environmental Committee, the chairman of the House Agriculture Committee, all have written letters to the EPA, first of all demanding an Office of Inspector General investigation, which they didn't know we had already initiated, and which the Inspector General said, yes, we are going to investigate this. The letter from Michael Conaway to the EPA said, we want to confirm that those people who are behind this illegal attack will be forever disbarred from receiving any more federal money. That's the tribes. Now, I'm not saying that that's going to happen, but that is those are some of the things that are at play in this. So Safe Family Farming is working to deal with this. Whatcom Family Farmers are one of many organizations around the state that are supporting it. Okay, next. I wanted to show you a little bit. If you haven't been to the What's Upstream website, please go there before it's taken down. They've already taken off the call to action button. They've removed the billboards. It's absolutely stunning that this website is still up there. But if you go to it, the first thing you're going to see is a tractor spraying a field. Then you're going to see a whole bunch of dirty water going into clean water. And then you're going to see this video of this spawned out salmon. And of course the message is, farmers are killing our salmon.
Well, it says there, farmers cause salmon to spawn and die.
Yeah, well, no, that's our question. You know, say, you know, but that's only the beginning of it. You know, the billboard said unregulated agriculture is putting our waterways at risk. How many of you think farming is regulated?
Oh.
Yeah. Well, most people do. But anyway, I won't go off on this anymore. All right, next. And here's what on the website it does say EPA funded, but the billboards and advertising and everything that they did not, and that's very illegal as well. Next slide. So I got behind on myself. We do have a website called Safe Family Farming. I was absolutely thrilled last night when I saw the editorial for Seattle Times. Along with the editorial, it had a button on there that said, do farmers protect or pollute water? You'll be surprised, and they linked it directly to our website.
Yeah.
So that's pretty good. Okay, next slide. Now, what we're really focused on doing, both Whatcom Family Farming and Safe Family Farming, is really reaching out to the non-farmer, and particularly what I call the 18 to 49 urban voter. I believe, as Rich mentioned, that our future rests in their hands. And you know, the good thing is they like farmers, especially small farmers. But you know, 99% or more of Washington State farmers are family farmers. Some of them are large, a lot of them are small. Those are the people that we're trying to reach out to, and that's why I was so excited about the Seattle Times article, editorial, because this has definitely reached those audiences. But that's where we really need to be focusing our effort. Next slide. And the message that we need to give them is that farmers are great stewards of the environment. Now I need to tell you that's not universally true, and that is something that's heartbreaking to us, and it's something that we need to deal with. There are farmers, even in our community, who are not operating as responsible stewards, and they're hurting all of us. And that's something that we have to deal with. And I think we have to deal with it as a community and as a farming community, and not simply rely on the enforcers to deal with that. Although they certainly are dealing with it. But we have to make certain that the message that we're sending is true, and hopefully as close to 100% true as we can make it. That farmers are great stewards. Our Whatcom Family Farmers have done amazing things. Rich is a great example. You go out to his farm, and I hope that you do. We're going to be doing more farm tours and things like that. You're going to be seeing all kinds of proactive measures that our farmers are doing to help protect the water and make certain that these criticisms are not valid. So, and the watershed improvement districts are one of the most positive things that we have, because now farmers can work together, they can assess themselves, they can coordinate, they can get grants, and they can put projects into place. And by the way, I should mention one of those, the Laurel Wood, the watershed improvement district that Rich is involved in, is working cooperatively with resources to do water quality testing and better source identification. And that's a really good thing, because if we can form more partnerships like that, based around the idea of saving family farming, we're going to be in a lot stronger position, even as we deal with our county council and other legislators. So hope you understand what we're trying to do there. Our focus is saving family farming, and we need their help in doing it. Next slide. So what we're doing, we're going to be doing more farm tours. We have the website, as you mentioned. We're doing a lot on social media. It's absolutely amazing. We've done about 15 different videos, and a lot of those videos have gotten like 20,000 views. The video I just put up 2 days ago on Safe Family Farming, I checked this morning, and it had, we've reached 4,000 people with that in 2 days. So social media is a hugely important part of what we're doing. We're doing meetings such as this. We'll be doing more advertising, more media outreach, that sort of thing, in order to really get the word out. And of course, all of that takes money. And I should mention, The money for Whatcom Family Farmers, we've raised in the neighborhood of $230,000 to $250,000 in its first year. And the vast majority of that has come from the farmers themselves. We have had some really good support from some of the farm-related businesses. But in order to do what we need to do and to accomplish what we're trying to do, we're going to have to reach out to more in the community to really support what we're trying to do. And so you may see some of that. Next slide. And our basic message in this, there's a page in our website. We can have the fish that the tribes are looking for. And we can have the farms that are important to us. And we can have a growing community. And those people who say you have to choose one of the three or two out of the three are simply wrong. But it does mean that we have to work together as a community. Very grateful for our county executive's leadership in that and the support that we're getting. But we know that this is possible to do, but it's not just up to the farmers. It will take all the community working together to make certain that those things happen. Next slide, and that's it. Thank you. Rich, why don't you start that?